So picture this. You've struggled with fat loss for the past 2 decades. You've cut your calories, you've increased your exercise, you've tried every new diet that has come along. You lost the weight only to regain it for the 9th time. Then you discover this crazy diet called carnivore and figure, what the heck? I've tried everything else, I may as well just give it a go. And it works.
Let's go.
And you come to learn over time that this is not another crazy fad diet, but this is in fact our ancestral way of eating. The diet works exceptionally well for 2 reasons. Number 1, it provides energy and nutrients in the form and amounts our bodies are designed to best utilize. And 2, it eliminates all the chemicals, toxins, and anti-nutrients from certain plant foods and food products that our bodies are not designed to use or to use effectively. Now, unlike the other times you've lost weight, you seem to be keeping it off except for the occasional 1 to 3 pound fluctuation. And you're doing this without restriction or deprivation. It's simply become the way that you eat. But now you have a new problem. You're stuck. You're not gaining any weight, but you're not losing any more. And those elusive 5 to 10 pounds is all that stands between you and you looking and feeling your personal best. And that's what we're going to address today. So, Corrie-Beth, does this at all sound or feel familiar to you?
Absolutely. This for me is why I decided to do this built for 40. I was like built by, and I'm like, nah, I don't want to be by. I want for. Built for 40. So I do turn 40 years old this year. It's my big 40 year. Catching up, Mike.
I can't let you know what I have planned for you just yet.
Oh, I'm excited. He smiles. But yeah, I think what I was noticing was similarly to when we had done keto, it's not that you let the reins off, but you find something that works and it works really well. And then all of a sudden, it's almost like you feel as though it's not working as well anymore. It's almost like when you fill up your gas tank all the way and you're like, yeah, I can drive all these miles. And then it starts to get down towards empty and it's your car. It doesn't feel as primed. And that's really where I was sitting. So there's nothing wrong, but I think the biggest component for me of carnivore was just simply that my fat intake was a lot higher than I thought it was, and my protein intake was not as high as I thought it was. And so those were the really 2 big things that I needed to address within my own eating. And by actually, I think it was 2 weeks, I had posted a before and after side-by-side video of my progress. So beyond just taking photos where you could suck in or, let your weight out. I could take a before and after photo right now, and you would think that it was months apart. The video, to me, was a way of really keeping that accountability for people to have a greater insight into what it looked like on a day-to-day basis. And I still do think I could share more, but again, how many videos of me in a bathing suit do you really want to watch? Maybe that answer is different for you, Mike. But I think people were like, oh my gosh, you hit your goal in 30 days. Why are you going to do this for the next 6 months? And I was like, sit tight, people. There's so many levels that you can take things to. And so now, just approaching 70 days now, I can't believe how different my body looks by tracking protein and cutting back on fat.
So that is the topic that I do want to get into today is lower fat carnivore, because it's not just you, it's clients that we've worked with and even myself in my own carnivore journey. I think it's interesting that when I first made the shift over to carnivore, within the first 2 to 3 months, I immediately got down to near competition shape without trying, just simply focusing on eating meat. And then what I noticed was over time, without seemingly changing anything, I started to lose that look. And it got to the point where I was like, okay, I could still live with this. This isn't a bad thing. I don't want to go crazy and have to, try to dial it in and track everything. But it finally reached the point where, well, you decided to do this built by 40 thing. And then we booked a vacation and I'm like, oh man, now I actually have to dial it in. And I started thinking about some of the advice I had given to other clients of ours who found themselves, after having great success on carnivore, absolutely stuck. They couldn't get their body composition to where they wanted it. And usually the answer is simple. It's drop more body fat, right? That's what we're all looking for, is we want to drop more body fat. And what I've come to see with many people in the carnivore space is they'll drop weight, but they're not necessarily getting into maybe their optimal shape. Like they still have this ideal in their mind that is much leaner than where they are now. And so while it became easy to lose all that weight that they had trouble taking off, or they would take it off and put it back on, now they're in this new place, as I described in our opening, where they're just stuck. Right? It's like, I would love to lose 5 or 10 more pounds, and I don't know what else I could change. Not recognizing that there are definitely changes that you can make with carnivore that would result in you reaching that ideal.
Well, and so we watched many clients follow that advice that you gave. And I was like, oh my gosh, this one got abs, this one got more ripped. And these are people in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond. And so as I'm watching clients get these awesome results, I'm like, why don't we just take our own advice? And that for me was actually the biggest driver is, how can you talk about something if you're not fully doing it yourself? And so it was just, major accountability. But talk to me then a little bit about why people stop losing fat on carnivore.
Well, you alluded to it before, which is over time, maybe some foods start to slip back in. And I'm not saying that they're the wrong foods. Like, you could still be eating carnivore, but you don't recognize how much extra fat you're eating. I mean, the common recommendation for people who are doing carnivore is 30% protein and about 70% fat. And maybe if somebody is eating carbohydrates, a little bit of carbohydrates, they're at 70% fat, 25% protein, and maybe 5% carbs, right? So hardly any. But what we don't see, because as carnivores, we don't track, we just know, hey, if I eat meat, I'm good. What we don't see is all the additional fat that we begin consuming, and recognizing or failing to recognize that fat is still an energy source. Maybe you recognize that, but we don't realize that you can overeat energy. You can consume more energy than your body's able to expend. Even if we're eating carnivore and we've found this way of eating that allows our metabolism to work optimally. It eliminates all the blockades, if you will, from our body accessing fat as a source of fuel. We still have limits. And I think that's where people forget that if you're not paying attention and you're constantly going over those limits, that energy has to go somewhere. And it's going to be stored as body fat. Because the only other macronutrient you're eating here is protein. And protein is not an energy source, or it's not a very efficient energy source.
Yeah, well, I think some real practical examples of excess fat intake with clients as well as personally is going to help a lot of people here. Because again, like you said, I was happy eating the way I was eating. I wasn't tracking anything. I ate meat, I ate bacon, I ate eggs. Like, it was good. Sometimes I snacked on butter. That sounds crazy to me still, but it was great. I just wasn't happy with the leanness of my body. So the biggest place I personally found was in my half and half. So I wasn't realizing how light I was making my coffee. And actually somebody wrote to me on Instagram and she was like, oh my gosh, your body. And then her next question was, what the heck did you change? And as I spelled it out for her, she's like, that's a lot of changes. And I'm like, it's really not a lot of changes when you think about it, but I guess it really was. So here's what I wrote to her. I stopped winging it and became really focused on actually hitting my protein target. So my target is at 30%. That for me is about 120 grams a day. And so I was low, believe it or not, and I needed to increase my protein. Then I said I stopped snitching a bite here or a bite there of the kids' snacks. So for me, I would make high protein crepes with gluten-free flour. Like, it's so not on the carnivore diet, but it's like, I had to taste it to make sure it was good for the kids. Stupid justification. That's all that was. That was like 100% done. Like, I'd make eggs and bacon for us and crepes for the kids, and they'd snack on ours, but I would absolutely just draw a line for myself. And then the other thing was just a nut here, a nut there, especially when we're at a friend's house and there's a charcuterie board, a couple of nuts. Nuts add up so fast. It's so crazy. And then, yeah, the cream in the coffee. And I just said basically it was so light. Once I actually had to measure, and I think just tracking it actually in our app or in MyFitnessPal and seeing how many calories or how many grams of fat were coming from the amount of cream I was putting in my coffee, it was actually disheartening. It was like 200 calories in my coffee. I mean, like, come on, that's ridiculous. So anyway, I scaled back on that, made a huge difference. But it was like you always say, and I know the quote says, like, big doors swing on small hinges. Like, those are such minuscule changes to make, but they had such a tremendous difference in the way that I look.
And for myself, see, I never had the issue of the snacking, the bites and this and that, but yet still I found myself in this place where I'm eating a perfectly carnivore diet and yet not making any movement in the direction I wanted to go. Not going backwards, which I think is a very important point here, because what we're talking about today is reaching that optimal state, reaching your ideal. And this is where the recommendations that I would make are going to differ from what you're going to hear from most carnivore influencers and such, because the advice they're giving is dead on, but the place that they lose sight of often is, how do you maximize for fat loss? Like, that becomes the question for the person who is seeking those last 5 to 10 pounds. Like, what do I need to do to get this off? So while traditional carnivore approach, just focusing on eating meat and butter and maintaining a clean diet, so to speak, is all you need to do. I mean, that gets you 90% there, but we're talking about that last 10%. And what I found for myself was that in eating a very carnivore diet, like, I didn't realize how much higher my fat was from what I thought it was. And that is where I broke out the app and said, even though I know all of these calculations could be off by as much as 20%, which oftentimes they are when you are tracking in MyFitnessPal or any of the nutrition tracking apps, the point is that by collecting data and being consistent with the foods that you're eating, you can at least get a sense of what direction you need to go in. And that for me was a realization that, oh, my fat is a lot higher than it should be. And if I just focused on tapering that back and also ensured that I'm hitting these protein targets, I should be good. And sure enough, in the past 3 weeks or so, I mean, I've seen myself drop like a 1.5% in body fat. My body weight has already come down, I think like 3.5, 4 pounds, and abs are showing like they have not in years. So
all of this excites both. I'm just going to say what people are thinking. It's great for your, romantic life. That said, there's 2 clients in particular that I could think of in our online program that you made these recommendations for, and one of them saw abs. I mean, this is somebody who's never had abs, and she's got like, she has straight up abs. So talk to us then a little bit about why we would need to lower fat on carnivore.
All right, so it goes back to what I was mentioning before about fat being an energy source. And you have the fat and you have carbohydrates. Those are our 2 dietary sources of energy. And as carnivores, we've already taken one of those off the table, right? Which means that when it comes to gaining body fat or losing body fat, it does become a question of energy expenditure. Can I expend more energy so that my body must tap into body fat instead of only dietary fat to get me where I want to go? And that was the change that she made. Is I love also, she now refers to herself as a fat adapted athlete because she ran a marathon on nothing but fat. But what she came to realize though was, even with that, like, you need to pay attention to your fat intake so that you're not overfeeding yourself with fat to simply provide energy, whether it be for exercise or just your activities of daily living. When you get consistent with restricting that fat a little bit, then it just makes it easier for your body to make that shift from burning dietary fat to body fat, because there will come a point in your day, or several points in your day, where your body recognizes, since there's no dietary fat coming in, I still need to pull from something. And at that point, your body has two choices. It could either pull from muscle, which is not desirable at all. It could break down muscle protein and turn that into energy, or it could tap into body fat.
How do you know? How do you know that your body is burning fat for fuel?
Well, I think you're going to see it. I mean, there's a couple things. In this discussion, you're going to physically see it in the changes in your body. But, from an overarching point of view, your body's burning fat for fuel when you have sustained energy throughout the day, when you're not experiencing fluctuations in how you feel after meals. I mean, those are probably the most telling signs that you've become fat adapted. For the client that you were just mentioning, for her, it was sustained energy while she's exercising. Her body is easily able to tap into fat and use that fuel source more efficiently than when she was a glucose-dependent athlete. And that's what most people are in just their daily lives. Most of us are relying upon glucose to fuel us. And that's why we experience the hunger. That's why we experience the ups and downs. That's why every 3 hours it feels like my blood glucose is dropping and I need to eat something right now. But when you're fat adapted, that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Like you just feel good all the time.
It's very advantageous, it sounds like, to
It is.
embark on this. As you're speaking, what I'm thinking about is, for you, like, ever been to the beach? Ever dug a hole in the sand? And what is digging a hole in the sand takes? It takes work, right? Like, you're constantly shoveling. And what I think about when we're adding fat, dietary fat, into our diet, it's kind of like your kid coming around with a bucket of sand and dumping it back into the hole. You're like, okay, I have to burn through this dietary fat or sand before I can actually continue to shred the hole, right? Like, it's harder to do it. But if they come along with like 10 buckets of sand because you're eating extra cheese, extra butter, extra half and half creamer. Somebody was talking recently about eating like lots of avocados. I was like, slow the bus. That's fat and carbs, by the way. Avocados, that's like a sneaky food. But it's like you're constantly dumping sand back in the hole. Like, it's going to take you forever to chisel that hole back out and make any more progress on the hole because you're so full of like the dietary fat that you're eating.
No, it's a great analogy, and it makes sense. And I think it brings up a really important point here, which is probably where I would like to transition to, which is, well, Corrie-Beth, you're telling me that pushing sand back in is going to make it harder to drop this body fat. So does that mean I should just not eat fat?
Hell no.
And exactly. And I think that we need to make that point clear, is that, we're not entitling or we're not titling this podcast, low fat carnivore.
No, yes,
we're
agreed.
titling it lower fat carnivore. And we're making this one slight adjustment to make it easier for our body to tap into body fat. We're not eliminating it. And by most people's standards, even going this lower approach is still
Very
high.
high.
It's still very high.
Yeah.
So that I think is where we should go next, is talking a little bit more specifically about what do these percentages, what should they look like?
Well, let's talk about the percentages so that someone can determine their own. And then I know listeners are always curious, how much fat do you consume in a day? So let's start with that, actually. How many grams of fat do you aim for daily?
Well, there's what it was and what I just 2 days ago adjusted it to. So I was eating around 130 grams of fat per day. And at that amount, I was still starting to drop body fat. But since I decided that I wanted to accelerate a little bit more, I decreased my fat intake further. So now I am taking in about, between 100 and about 105 grams of fat per day.
All right, I want to put that into perspective. So for someone who's like, oh my gosh, that's so much fat. Like, I remember doing bodybuilding our first time, and I think my max was like 20 grams a day. So we're well above that. So at 125 grams of fat, we multiply that times 9 units of energy or calories. We get 1,125 calories. So you're able to burn over 1,000 calories a day coming from fat and still lose fat. Like that's, I think that's hashtag goals for most people. Yeah. Okay. My ratio, I like ranges. So like my range was like 100 to 120. I think it was higher, but I dipped it down like 80 to 100. So I still have almost 1,000 calories a day coming exclusively from fat, which is amazing. What should those ratios then look like for a normal person?
All right. Well, let's start with the ratios on carnivore, as we mentioned before, are typically about 25 to 30% of calories from protein, maybe 0 to 5% from carbs, and then 70% from fat. Taking this approach, we are dropping our fat to about 55 to 60% of total calories. Protein is going to be in the 35 to 40% range, and then carbohydrates are still at 0 to 5%.
So can I point that out though for people that are like paying attention but driving but not totally paying attention? So fat came down a little bit and protein came up a little bit.
That's correct.
Right? Because you can't, you have to be at 100%.
Yeah, because energetically, like we still need to consume a certain amount of food. Like what I hate to see, and I know you do too, is people put themselves on starvation type diets where the focal point is just eating as few calories as possible. And our goal is to actually eat as many calories as possible, but find that threshold where we're still able to consistently lose body fat. And when I say consistently, I don't mean looking for a 2 to 3 pound drop on the scale every single week. I'm talking about shooting for a half to maybe a full pound at maximum each week. And that is a good consistent pace for ensuring that you are maintaining your muscle mass, because we don't want to lose lean tissue, because that's what we've done in the past. When we've crash dieted, when we've gone calorie restricted approach, we wind up losing more muscle tissue in the process, depleting our metabolism, and that is the reason why we regain that weight shortly thereafter coming off that diet.
How many calories a day do you consume?
Right now, I just dropped down to probably in the range of about like 1,700 per day.
What were you at?
I was sitting at around 1,900.
Okay.
You know, and again, for a guy my size, I'm not a big guy, so let me put it in a different context. Like my resting metabolic rate is just over 1,500 calories a day. So any of you out there, like, you can easily go figure out what your BMR is. You know, there are calculators online. If you use any body composition type of tool, usually those will tell you as well. And that should give you a good indication of how low you shouldn't go. You know, you should not be going below your basal metabolic rate. You know, I think that for me, my threshold is probably where I have it now, which is about 200 calories or so, 250 calories above that BMR.
Yeah.
And that is me being aggressive right now. My goal is to not stay this aggressive. It's to use this shorter period of time to aggressively strip fat before we go away, and then gradually start to increase my food intake again, but using these same ratios so that I could make sure that I ramp my metabolism back up.
I love that. And I think that that's so great for people too. It's like just a little bit of a dip to then ramp back up again. And I really want to drive home the point you made about eating as much food and nutrients as possible and still losing body fat. I mean, that really should be everybody's goal. And we had a new client actually come into one of our studios yesterday, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm like stalking you on Instagram, and I can't eat meals as big as you're eating." I was like, "Girl, slow down." Like, that's why I hate influencers. Like, eat what I eat in a day. You don't need to eat what I eat. Like, let's eat what you eat. Like, let's actually figure out a meal that's going to work for you. Like, do you want to eat 2 times a day, 3 times a day, 4 times a day? I love eating 2.5 times a day. It's 2 big meals, and I'm talking like 800 calorie meals. That makes me feel so good. I also love that I don't need to keep stopping and grazing all day long. I mean, gosh, that just kills your productivity as well as your mental focus. Like, give me the big meal. right? And then like something small in between or something small at the end of the day. Like last night, we both had a protein shake at the end of the day because that's what fit and that's what worked. But she was so concerned. She couldn't eat as much as I was eating. And my explanation was this has been a process and this has been a journey to get up. I mean, I remember eating 1,200 calories a day. I mean, I sit at 1,650 up to 1,700 calories a day, which for a 5'3.5", we just discovered I'm actually 5'4". I grew. 5'4" woman with like a more petite, lean frame now. That's a lot of food.
You know, it sounds like a lot of food, but it's an appropriate amount of food. And I think where people also sort of lose sight of, again, food intake is that if the food that you're eating is very nutrient dense and calorically dense, then you don't need to eat a lot of food. So if we're eating beef is a very nutrient dense food. It could also be a very calorically dense food because of the higher fat and combination with higher protein in that food, which means that you don't need to eat a whole lot of it to get to the numbers that you're looking to hit. So to have 50 grams of protein in a meal, in a carnivore meal, that may only be about 8 ounces of ground beef or steak. And when you really get down to it, again, when you take away all the other things that are usually eaten with that food, when you take away the rice and the bread and the vegetables and
French
the this
fries.
and the that, it's not a ton of food.
Well,
not a ton of food.
We were just recently at an event and talking to some of the other moms there and the other dads. And of course, someone, commented on like, oh, you're just eating the burger patty, get away from here with your healthy food. I'm like, oh, you guys are funny. But it was so funny. One of the other moms was like, oh my gosh, like I don't know how you eat 2 burgers. And it's literally like comparing apples and oranges. It's not the same thing. Eating a bun and a burger is not the same thing as eating a burger patty. Like I think I had 3 burger patties at that said event, which over 60 grams of protein, right? In excess of 60. But like I felt great. I wasn't bogged down. I wasn't tired. So I just want to point out that too. So for people that are thinking like, oh my gosh, you're eating 3 burgers, like you're probably envisioning bun, lots of accoutrements and condiments and all this stuff and a big side of fries. Like, yeah, that's what you see on TV. That's what you see out at a restaurant. So you see at the diner. It's what you see everywhere. It's not what we're eating. I'm eating a burger patty, just the patty. So let's talk a little bit about some adjustments that we clients have made to food choices to be on this track of fat loss.
Sure. One that we've already mentioned, which I know is one that kind of drives the carnivore community nuts sometimes, is when we mention having a protein shake. And
Probably.
It's because many will put it into that category of food product.
Processed.
Whey protein is, we know, a very excellent source of protein. But in this instance, where it's become a tool is where I still like eating a ribeye. But that's going to be very high fat and high protein, which means that that's going to take up a good chunk of my fat in one meal. It could be actually 3/4 of a day's worth in one meal. And so to know that, hey, I still have to hit this protein quotient, and the only way I could do that is with leaner proteins, that's where implementing a protein shake maybe in the middle of the day might be helpful. But generally speaking, I think that both of us have focused on eating leaner proteins. This is, again, we're not talking about bland grilled chicken breast here, people. We're still talking about eating steak, but instead of having the ribeye, maybe it's the flank steak.
Guess what's for dinner tonight?
Flank steak. Love it. But that's a great source of a high protein food that's lower in fat compared to some other meats that we would eat.
Walk us through the cow, because you have great knowledge of this. I'm going to spit out cuts of meat, and you let the viewer know, like, what is higher fat. So ribs.
Ribs are going to be high fat.
Yeah. Flank or skirt steak.
Low fat.
Ribeyes.
High fat.
Ground beef.
Higher fat.
Unless you get the 90-10.
Exactly. And that's why it depends on where you get it. Like, we get it from a farmer who butchers it, and we know we're probably getting like that 80-20 type of ground beef.
We have the whole cow in our freezer right now.
Yeah, but you could go to the supermarket and get 90-10 or
93.7.
Yeah, I mean all of those, which again is helpful for somebody who's buying their meat in the supermarket. Like that's one very simple shift. They could go from the 80-20 to 90-10, and immediately they save themselves some fat while still getting the same amount of protein.
Brisket.
On the fat side, but it falls more in the middle. Like if you're eating the fattiest parts of it, obviously higher. If you're eating some of the leaner parts, then it's actually relatively low.
T-bone steak.
Sits right in the middle.
Nice. Porterhouse.
Also sits more in the middle to high side.
Because it's got a ribeye and a filet mignon in it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What about like a rump roast?
Ooh, probably on the higher fat side.
Okay. I don't know if I missed anything.
Well, a filet mignon is going to be very, very lean.
Very lean.
And it's probably your leanest and most tender.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so simple food adjustments. And again, listen, like getting a whole cow is very advantageous and helpful because you get all the cuts so you can determine what it is that you want to have. But biggest adjustments would be like just cooking with less butter with the 80-20. You know, you don't have to use a whole lot of butter or tallow or whatever it is if your focus is fat loss. Let's talk a little bit about adjustments to your meal structure. You were talking about high protein, high fat meals, high protein, low fat meals. What does that look like for you?
So right now it's been looking more like 2 high protein, higher fat meals that bookend my day. And then in the middle, that's where I'm implementing the shake or beef sticks or something that again, is going to be high protein and lower in fat just to try to control the variables. Whereas I think, before making this push, it was probably more like 3 high fat, moderate protein meals per day. So that's where I would say the biggest adjustment has been made.
Yeah. Really simple. I love it. I mean, another way that if someone, again, is looking to bring their fat down would be if you are making 4 or 5 eggs, you could pull out a yolk or 2. Like that's 6 grams of fat gone right there. That's another strategy that I've been using. I love having my eggs cooked in butter, so I'm not giving up the butter, but I'll pull out an egg yolk, just to help account for. And the other thing was I stopped putting so much cheese on everything. Like I was definitely a big sprinkler of cheese in my omelets and on my taco bowls. Taco bowl is just as good, honestly, with or without it. I've used sour cream in place.
Yeah, and it's funny for me, it's like I've cut back probably on the sour cream because, I mean, I was doing ground beef with cheese and sour cream, like doing all the things.
Yeah.
And, it's only when you actually take the opportunity to calculate this out. And as I said before, it's not going to be 100% accurate, and that doesn't matter. What matters is how you eat every day. And when you finally get it down on paper, so to speak, or you can review it and say, wow, I didn't realize that from a percentage standpoint, I'm that much higher on fat than I thought I was, then you could be more conscientious about some of the choices that you make. That was the big change, right? It was just recognizing like, oh, wow, I'm probably more at like 75% fat and 25% protein each day. I got to make some shifts here. And so by bringing it down to 65% and then 60%, and then more recently, I've been just floating back and forth depending upon the day between 55 and 60%. I kind of found what's my sweet spot.
Yeah. Well, I think what's important too is I think this is an advanced strategy, if you will, for someone that's coming off of a standard American diet or even more of like a flexible or paleo diet. If you're going to go higher protein or carnivore based, you may not have to worry about this in the beginning. A lot of people do drop body fat right off the bat. So again, it's more of an advanced strategy for someone down the line. So if you're just starting out, I would worry less about this, but this is such an awesome tool to tuck in the back of your head for later when you're like, oh yeah, remember when they said, I'm going to have some great success up front and I'll probably listen, this is 2.5, 3 years in for you, 2.5 for me. This is a long ways coming where we've just enjoyed eating whatever within the plan. Let me just ask one last question. Your long-term strategy then is not to continually cut fat. What is the strategy?
I alluded to it before, which is after reaching that point that for me feels ideal, I'm going to gradually ramp everything back up. I'm going to probably keep the ratios the same for a little while because I do feel that I could ramp up my food intake while still continuing to drop body fat. And I want to take advantage of that. So that's why I'm going to maintain these ratios. But I find myself over time probably creeping back up to that 70% fat and, probably 30% protein.
That's awesome. So listen, guys, this is an amazing strategy for you to use down the line. We are encouraging you in it. If you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out and share this episode with somebody that's been intrigued about the carnivore diet and how it works. Like, how could you possibly eat all of that, red meat and still lose fat and feel great, and your labs are good and you feel good, your mood is good, you sleep well? It's pretty mind-boggling to me still today. But thanks for tuning in. We look forward to having you on the next episode. And seriously, reach out if we can help in any way.